hanging type, you know, like a French hanging savage type. That showed that he was telling her around, the stuff that's going to be in it, it's going to have a honor. Anyway, never did get around to putting in a monorail until 1958. Walt's driving along in Germany near Cologne with his wife Lily in a rented car, and also a monorail drives right across the street right in front of him. 5 seconds one way or the other, people have never seen it. He might not have ever had a monorail. So he drives over to see where the monorail went, and doesn't speak German. They send him back across the street to the administration building of a company called Hallway, and immediately got into a big conversation and started making a business deal about monorail. So he came back with a brochure and some photographs of this really super ugly looking train, and said, we're making a deal with a monorail, we're going to get you started on it, and here's this train, it's really ugly looking. I want you to design a monorail. Walk away. Well, you can't tell Walt no. And I've never seen this configuration now. It's called German saddleback. It sits on the concrete beam. And my first thought was, this looks like a loaf of bread with a slot in the bottom sitting on a stick. So I can see Walt's point about, no, they're not going to buy that, but he wants it. So I had never seen this configuration ever before in my life. But within about 2 days, my kitchen table one morning, I made a sketch, which later turned into that rendering. The idea was to hide the slot from the bottom. It's still going to be a slot in the bottom of it. So I thought, how do you remember Buck Rogers? I've some pictures up here. That's the way we behave when we're working on the monorail. The little sled runners, this thing that comes down and land on the planet, the little skid runners. In fact, it swoops back like that. Then you have a long-pointed front end like a B-47 bomber. But the fact is that there's still a slot. And remember, the fuselage is always curves around like that, and the little fins flare out just a little bit. All of that is visual camouflage to hide the blunt fact of the slot in the bottom of the stick. And actually today, people always look at the monitors, it just glides along. They never see it. The block is something with a slot bottom sitting on the stick. It's camouflage. That's how it started. It's like 8.5 months later, you get the Vice President of the United States to ride on it. So we did stuff in a pretty short time. Around Disney today, you can't get a budget in 8.5 years. Another question. This guy has a question.
I got a question. And Bob, I don't know if you were part of this, but being born and raised out there, I remember the House of Tomorrow. You remember that at Disneyland?
Yes, the Montana.
Yeah. I mean, what was that about? No. No. What I mean by that is that, were you part of that, or did you know when that was going on? Because I can remember going to that when I was such a child, and you had toasters popping out. Of course, then it was real futuristic. And I mean, did you know where that concept came from, or the whole thing about that, or?
No, I never knew a thing about it, but it came along with Monsanto sponsoring exhibits in Disneyland, which later turned out to be the voyage through inner space, which turned out to be, we wanted to have a ride system, and so I came up with the idea of the Omnimover, and so that was the first Omnimover attraction. Most people think it was Haunted Mansion. Because voyage through inner space came and went, and nobody remembers that, but they all remember Haunted Mansion. Even the Little Mermaid right here today, that started as Monsanto, which was related to the reason Monsanto was sponsoring and put in that house. And if you know the history of that little house, when they get ready to take it out, you take it, you just demolish it. And they had one of these cranes, they cast iron ball, and they swing, the building will come right down. All they did was keep bouncing off the house. Conventional manner, demolition did not work. So they wound up sawing it up in pieces, and it took forever to saw it up because you couldn't break the house. So it was a pretty good design, right?
Yeah.
Okay, question? Yeah.
Can you tell us from the first time?
First time I met him all day, I didn't know who it was. Who took my martini? That's water. I want a glass of water. Hang on a second. See what I do? I put water in a martini glass. Really? I do. Always flavored water. But anyway, it looked like you're having a good time, but you brought it home. So always remember that. You go to a party, get a martini glass, buy the olive, and put water. That's actually water. That's it.
Isn't it called the other one, like the people movers?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Somebody starts the question. Oh, yeah.
The first time that.
Oh, yeah. The 83-year-old people, they need to be reminded. Whatever I just heard in 3 seconds. Okay. I go over to the studio. Go over there on a Saturday morning, and it was in response to a little body that was built on a chassis of a little car. I had a guy come in and build a little chassis. Somebody built why. The Walt didn't want to buy a really ugly German car that the guy was trying to sell him. In fact, the head was on the back lot with green and yellow, had Disneyland painted on the hood, and I saw pictures of Kirk Douglas and his two little boys driving the thing around the back lot, and made a lot of smoke and junk car. So Walt decided to have his own car. He got as far as down the arc and looked at Montrose, built the chassis, but the guy didn't go any further than that, and he didn't finish the body, so they needed the body designer like now. So I was asked to go out there and go out and look at the chassis of the car. You know how guys, when they stand around and talk, you put your foot on the wheel and you put your elbow down on the wheel and talk wheel spare wheel available. And this guy walks up and he's got a one-way hair and unshaven, and I remember he had like a right back in his boat, and all those little silver painted wooden boats. He had a funny little tie. I just took him as father of one of the night cars or something. And we put the story, was talking about the car, and then we walked away. Everybody said, see you, Walt. And I thought, that was Walt. I never met him. That was it. Just like that. Never going. Oh, wait a minute.
What was the incentive for, or the directive that you had that ended up inventing the omni-mover system? Because that just revolutionized the way rides were done.
The question's too long.
Too long. Okay. What was the directive that you had that came up with the omni-mover system?
Oh, I didn't have a directive.
You just came up with it?
I just came up with it.
You said that's a good idea.
After the World's Fair, which was 50 years ago, which is this program that Marty and I have been putting on all week and we'll put on tomorrow, there were several attractions that had very, very interesting ride systems. Obviously, the most interesting was the Magic Skyway, which I designed. General Motors had one that was a flat conveyor with patio chairs going to the pallets. Really exciting, but it carried a lot of people. AT&T had a continuous ride. It was a very nice one. And I was quite taken with the General Motors one because it looked like it had a very simple drive system. So I looked up the guy that designed it and talked to him, and he sent me a bunch of drawings on how he did it. And it's what's called a squeezer drive. In other words, you have a vehicle in which you have a fin that hangs down below the vehicle between the split rails, and you have a drive like two belts all squeezed together, driving this fin. And I thought that's a pretty simple way to do it. But I think I got a simpler way to do it. So we started to design people over for the Red Tar Pits in L.A. That job never went anywhere. That gave me an idea that I'd like to do a squeezer pinch drive someday. And then one day I was sitting in John Hench's office, and we're just joshing about how to tell stories, how to do this. And if you recall, I'm reading John Hench's book about designing Disney. He always talked about in a movie, you have a segue from one scene to another when you tell a story. And when you go from one scene to another, it's kind of difficult because you're always going forward through the scene. You can't control it. And so I'm just sitting there, and he had a candied apple on his desk. And we'd always thought in terms, you got a track, you got a vehicle. Okay, now what are we going to do? So I just casually picked up this candied apple, and I said, well, you know, John, we can have a track and go right, left, turn, go up and down. You know, and we just stick a candied apple on the top of the thing, and we can twirl it around, we can tip it one way or the other. It'd be really, really simple. We just simply add a movable chair to a track vehicle. It was just simple as that. And I said, you know, this would be really easy because, you know, we can tell a story now, or we can control the story. We can be looking at it, and then we can kind of turn and watch it, turn around, and all of a sudden we'll turn around. Oh, we got another scene on the right here, we got one on the left. Oh, we'll go backwards for a while and look at something, spin around and do something else. It was just a conversation, about 10 minutes worth. And as I was describing it, I just used the word, I said, well, it's still primitive, go in all directions. And at that time, I'm a pilot, and one of the things of a radio navigation range, for any of you guys who are a pilot, it's called an omni range. And I just saw omni meaning all, and we're moving, omni mover. Temporary name. Well, the temporary name got stuck. That's all there was to it. And then, of course, right away, we had the Monsanto ride. They were talking about how are we going to do all this stuff. And all of a sudden, John, you know, within a couple of days, I was like, oh, we got a new thing. Gurr's going to make this thing. And so right away, the artist started laying out track directions. And then the idea was we made a little mock-up that showed that, yeah, we could put 3 people in this little thing and it would twirl around. It didn't do much of it except just twirl a little bit. But it got started in the mock-up and the Monsanto. But as we were designing that, the Haunted Mansion had been under design for years. It's going to be a walk. We never could solve the walking problem. And then all of a sudden, Bill Martin and Rolly Crump working on the Haunted Mansion. They said, oh, let's take the Monsanto thing. Oh, we're going to solve the problem. We can control it. We don't have to have a walkthrough. So the Haunted Mansion got designed immediately with the idea of using the somnomer. But any of you know the history of the haunted house in Disneyland? That thing got built in 63 years before we ever built the Haunted Mansion because we knew we were going to build a Haunted Mansion, but we didn't know what it was. And the guy, Harvey Gillette was the guy who ran the drafting department, and he had his heart set on that was his house. So they got budget started, and well, we'll build a house, we'll just plan it there, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with it later. True, that's why it came up. You got it? Who else got it? Oh, you got a question.
I've got a question for you. Since this is an event about Walt Disney, can you tell us what you think Walt Disney's legacy is?
That was the question?
Yeah. How has Walt's legacy inspired you and continues to inspire others to this day?
I'd have to make up the answer.
Go ahead. you're
I think every guest in the world, you know, by the hundreds of millions, probably has their own perception of who was Walt Disney. Of course, they never met him, except for people who were alive at that time. Walt was doing his little TV show at night, which started in October of '54. So, you know, a lot of people, you know, like Uncle Walt, he's always friendly, he's always telling the stories. And then, of course, if you were to talk to any of the still surviving Imagineers, you'll get a slightly different story, depending on whether you got along with him or not, and depending on whether you read him very quickly and just jumped to it right away, or you were a little slow, or you argued a little bit. Everybody will have a different idea. I'm amazed today. I was talking to a few people that work on it, and we all have a different take. So it's hard to say legacy. I think it's millions of legacies depend on what everybody thought. That's the closest I can come to trying to answer your question.
I think that's fair.
Okay, yes.
How do you guys get all that stuff done in time for the 64 employees there?
Oh, I give business lectures all the time in addition to history lessons. It's blunt and simple. We didn't have a computer. We didn't have a smartphone. We had dog phones. We had a switchboard. You want to call somebody? You call and they'll place the call by plugging the wire into the slot.
What a concept.
We don't have meetings. You can't be a publisher. Typewriters, you could put 5 pieces of paper in an IBM selected typewriter. So you can't do anything more than make 1 master letter and 4 other people know about it. Communications are so simple. Usually the problem with the phone or everything else was you need an answer, go get them. You see them, or go find where they are, go and ask them another question. You don't have a project manager, you don't need coordinators. You follow what I'm saying? All of that stuff stops. Today, most companies get almost 4 hours of work out of an 8-hour day. We were getting about 7 in those days. And I'm serious about this because the worst word I've ever heard in industry is IT, information technology. Information technology people invent absolutely nothing. All they do is schmooze processes of lateral information while inventing absolutely nothing and taking up all your time. That's the difference. The other thing is, of course, we have to walk with regulations to do them. Sure, we had all safety regulations anyway, we had to meet. But environmental impact report, approvals for this, approvals for that. The final thing that I recall was really different. People in those days were unafraid to speak up and take charge. Today, generally speaking, people like to help create something, but they do not want to be the target in case something goes wrong. So I don't blame people today trying to keep their head down, make sure they're on a committee in which the committee is unanimous so that your name doesn't stick out different than anybody else's name. And it's all done, every meeting, how many meetings end, with the minutes being written, somebody types it, it's emails and sent out, you stand there, okay, what's the next meeting, so somebody will tell us what to do next. We never waited. If you're on something and working on it, you know the stuff that it needs and the stuff that you need. You need it out of somebody, go get them. Go get the information. The other final thing that was the giant difference is, today you have to get approval, charge numbers, budget, man-load it, staff it, communicate it, IT it to death. In those days, if somebody actually started working on it, get going on it right now, and don't ever ask permission to do anything. It's up to Walt to come around to find out that wasn't quite what he wanted. If he can't do that, he'll have a conversation with us about it. Today, it takes months for a president of a company to find out everything that's going on is completely wrong. Those are all the differences. It's not just this, the whole world is like that now. So I'm glad I was born early enough that I could get it done really fast and get the hell out.
You didn't have to worry about human resources.
Yeah. Oh, you got it.
Have you ever thought about if Walt had lived for another 10 or 15 years, what might have happened, or?
No, that's hypothetical and sorry, I won't answer. Okay, so wait a minute.
Back in the day, were there very many ride concepts or rides turned down because either the lawyers, finance people, or insurance people said they were too dangerous, too expensive?
Well, we'd already killed the lawyers. That's the answer. No, generally speaking, let's say in the case of rides, I'd have to look back at what we would call rides in Disneyland for the first number of years. I said what they were going to be, and nobody told me how they got to be or what they can't be. I just got started and I just did it, and Walt liked it, and we built it, and it worked, and we go to the next one. So today, where you have to have compliance committees, you have, how many times you go to a meeting, somebody says, to walk us through the new project. Nobody ever walked me through any project, and I didn't walk anybody else through a project. I figured out, out of my head what I thought we ought to be doing. Walt would walk around and come into my office 2 or 3 times a week, look at it, and have a little conversation, keep going. That's approved. So move that. Oh, here you go.
What was your most challenging project that you had worked on?
I never had a challenging project. I'll stop and think just a minute. Backing up just a little bit. Walt was curious, 100% curious at all times. That is a super trait. Some people have it, some people don't have that. Some people sit around in high school and party and text, and absolutely no information ever comes into their head. They got to go get. Walt was always looking into stuff everywhere. There's a lot of people I met. That's all we ever do. I have that disease. I still do that today. Friday night, martini time, sitting there in the rocking chair. Boy, you know how much I know on Friday that I did not know on Monday. I'm still so into stuff. I may never use it, but guess what? What if you had just enough in your head and somebody asked you to do something? Well, you already know a lot about it. Little bits and pieces, just enough here. So my answer always is when somebody says, well, it was a challenge, well, there wasn't one, because immediately it came to mind and visualizing in my head, there's several ways to do something, so the immediate challenge is, okay, which one of the 4 or 5 ways will not do, which one do you think will pay off the soonest? And I go for that one first. If that didn't pan out, well, I had 3 or 4 other ideas, we could get those one too. So I never saw it as a challenge, but I understood over the years people asked about challenge. I think they went to engineering school, and they saw everything that had to go by rote, a process, and it was done with what's called a curriculum, which is generally done by instructors who never made it in industry and came back as an instructor. And everything had to be this process.